Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Educated Collins Snap channel. How you doing? So today we're going to be talking about my favorite deck from this patch. Now, I think it's a strong deck. I think it's a good deck. However, anytime like a YouTuber or a streamer will promote a deck, that kind of warps the meta in a way where the deck becomes bad. Basically, you're giving people your full list, you're giving people strategies, tips to play around it, and you're encouraging people to try out the deck, right? So people who are actually thinking about the game, thinking about climbing, will just play a deck that counters this, has a few counter cards, and you kind of render the deck not as good by sharing it. So I will say I do think this deck is strong, but most of the time, by revealing this, by making it more popular, it kind of loses its charm. It loses its surprise factor. So it ends up being worse. Now, with that in mind, just be aware of that if you want to try out the deck. I do think it's a good deck, but you might play it and be like, ooh, everyone just has the counters. Well, yeah, they do, because I just told you what the whole deck list is. But overall, I just want to say that first, and then we can talk about the deck list and everything. So let's begin. So this is a deck that I have shared before in my 10 decks to try video, but I didn't really put a full spotlight on it. I didn't really showcase like, "Ooh, this is the one you should try," that kind of thing. But I've played with this deck quite a bit, and I kind of like how it performs. I kind of like how it deals with the metagame right now. It wasn't really good in the quantum tunnel location, so I didn't really want to share it then, but I do think now is a good time to post a deck list. So this is not a deck that I created. This is a deck from KuengKo, a Korean streamer. I'm definitely gonna have his link in the description below. So if you want to drop a follow, say something, say thank you or whatever in Korean. If you do play a deck and you like it, right, make sure to check his stream out. But this is an aggressive Invisible Sandman. I'm still working on the name. List where you have a lot of aggressive tools early, and then you drop this Sandman to kind of lock your opponent down from making plays. Then you can kind of close out the game through a series of Shang-Chi, Doctor Doom, Captain Marvel, Magneto. You can kind of close out the game there. There are a couple alternative options that we're going to talk about near the end of the video, but that is the list, as the general list as it stands. Now we'll talk about each of the cards one by one and why they're included. So zero is a very important piece, a very essential piece of this composition. You kind of use zero to play your other tools. So zero combos very well with the Lizard, with Titania, with Maximus. Just your early game aggression with Ebony Maw. This really lets you get so much power out in the early game. And I honestly think Zero has too much base power. Its ability is kind of written like it's a downside, but it's not. And the base power of Zero is really high. 3 is a lot. So just a huge tempo play when you get Zero down with any of your synergies, and really just is an essential tool of why you can play so aggressively in the early game. Next up, we have Titania. This is a very good combo with Zero. You just get these huge swings. It's just a nice card. You can hide this under Ebony Maw, or not. You can hide this under Invisible Woman if you don't want its effect messing with you. And it's just huge power for one cost. So it's just a really nice card that you can fit in that has a lot of power swings, and just a good piece in this aggressive playstyle. And the last one drop, we have Ebony Maw. So this is a card that really is sometimes hard to use, sometimes hard to utilize. The ongoing effect that you can't play cards here is really punishing a lot of the time if you don't have any way to mitigate that. So by having Zero, by having Invisible Woman, you can kind of get around this problematic card as well as the Doctor Doom, right? And the Captain Marvel. You can really get around this can't play here effect by either hiding it, removing it, or playing cards that don't care about this effect and can go on the field anyway. So this is huge power for one, just a very strong aggressive play that you can just sit down on the field and really pressure your opponents. And next up, we have Invisible Women. This might actually be the most important card in this list. Surprisingly, just the what it does in the game, at least in the meta game right now, is it kind of confuses your opponent. They start thinking, oh, are they playing this card? Are they playing Patriot? Are they playing some random list? And if you haven't shown enough information yet, you could really get them to do weird things. Like they'll play Cosmo into your Invisible Woman. They'll play random stuff. They will avoid it because they don't know exactly what's going on there. So you can really mess them up. They might Enchantress randomly when you don't really care. Like there's so much that can mess up your opponent because they don't know exactly what you're running. By revealing this list, putting a spotlight on it, now they might know, and now it might not be as effective, right? So that's something you have to be aware of. But currently, as I was playing it and trying it and stuff like that, the sneakiness of this can be very good, and it has its own functions besides being sneaky. So this card lets you play Titania inside it and not worry about its effect. It lets you play Ebony Maw inside it, not worry about its effect. It lets you play Maximus inside and not worry about its effects. So there's a lot there that you can do to use this ability effectively. So this is just a very nice card. It fits the aggressive playstyle really well because you can be aggressive but not showcase the points you're putting down, right? Some people will like contest this lane. They don't know that you're dropping like 19 points inside this hidden lane with just like 4 power, 3 power worth of cards. Well, 3 power is a little, but 5 power worth of cards. You're dropping so many points there. It can be hard to realize that's what's going on. So definitely a strong tool. I think it's one of the core cards. If you don't have this card, I don't think you can really run this deck in the way it's supposed to be designed. So definitely a cool piece, and I really like how this kind of subverts the expectations of what Invisible Woman is usually played for. Next up, we have Lizard. So with Lizard's not like a crazy card here, but it just works with the flow. You want tons of power early. Lizard's 5 power for 2. That's pretty good. And especially with the Sandman that we're going to talk about later, it's hard to fill up locations. So you actually don't really have too much to worry about with the ongoing a lot of the time if you have the Sandman. So it just ends up being 2 for 5, which is solid. Not crazy, not every card is going to be crazy, but this fits the playstyle, fits the aggressive nature of the deck, and just works well. Next up, you have Maximus, right? So Maximus, I think everyone knows, is a good, extremely cost-efficient card, right? 3 for 7 is very strong. And then your opponent drawing 2 cards. Sometimes that can bite you, and sometimes not. But a lot of times you don't want to have this ability active. So you'll play 0 into Maximus, or you'll put Maximus into the Invisible Woman, so that at the end of the game, that's when it pops. You don't really feel that effect too much. But it's just a very strong, high value card that just lets you contest lane. So definitely a good one. You do have to be careful. You can play this without any synergies. Just play it and give them the 2 cards. But the more cards you give them, the more answers they might have. But sometimes if you know you have Sandman coming, then the 2 cards, it's going to be hard for them to use them completely efficiently. So it is there. It is a good card. It does work. And then here we have the major tech of this deck, the major unique part of the deck. This is what people always look at when I share this list or I talk about this list, they're like, "There's a Sandman in here. Why is there a Sandman in here, Colin? Sandman's a bad card. Don't you know? Like, why are you doing Sandman?" And I just think like a lot of decks right now are very flood centric, where they tend to play a ton of cards near the end of the game. You do have like the double She-Hogs or the She-Hulk plus something, right? Like She-Hulk's super popular right now. Death can be super popular right now. The Thanos can be super popular right now, right? There's so many cards that or archetypes right now that flood, and Sandman just says, no, no flooding. You play one card, I play one card. That is the name of the game. Now, obviously, the downside is that this costs 1 power and you're losing a lot of tempo by playing this. But that's where the aggressive nature of this deck really salvages this Sandman play. Because your early game is so strong, so aggressive, you don't actually get too punished for playing this 1 power card. I would say I wouldn't mind a Sandman buff, like move this to 2 power. Like I wouldn't mind that at all, right? I think that would be fine. But you are losing so much because you bank up your power credit in the early game that you can relieve some of it to play the Sandman, which locks them down in some archetype. So if you understand the archetype you're playing against, you're like, ooh, they're gonna hate this. You snap, you play Sandman, and you lock down that win. So I think it's a really sneaky, powerful card. Sometimes you might not like understand how much work it's doing for you, but if you've been on the receiving end of a Sandman, you're just like I can't do anything now. You understand like this can be the winning card, the most important card that you played in the match. So definitely think it works well here. There are some alternatives. If you just hate this card and you're like, I don't want it, there are other things you can do. But I do think it's nice to try it out, especially if the pocket meta you're in does play a lot of floody archetypes. This can do really well. And then here we have Shang-Chi, right? With a lot of the um, limiting factors of Sandman and some of the aggressive stuff, people tend to play a lot of big cards. I think Shang-Chi is just a good card anyways in the meta. A lot of people are playing Shuri. Shuri's one of the best cards right now. So you have this option to kind of take out their big, strong tools, right? Before they can do anything. We're not running armor, though you could run armor currently in the original list. So the Shang-Chi kind of works well, kills off big stuff. People want to, if they can only play one card, they want to play their biggest impact card. So a lot of times they play their big stuff and then you Shang-Chi it last turn, and that can get you the win. And next up, we have Captain Marvel. So if you know me, I actually don't like Captain Marvel. I'm more of a Vision person myself. I'm just like, with Vision, you just have to do the work, but then you get 1 more power on top of it, right? And that I think can be just way better. But I think Captain Marvel works here in its own way because of how the board states tend to be. You tend to be in this position where they have to play one big card, you're playing your big card, and if they guess or if you guess wrong, then you might be behind. Well, Captain Marvel's like, okay, you can't guess wrong because I will save you, even if you messed up on the decision making there. So it just since people are playing one card at a time, a lot of the games, in the end game, you get saved if you make the incorrect guess. Where with Vision, you have to really know exactly what they're thinking, which can be hard. This is more of a like fail safe strategy to run this Captain Marvel. If you don't have Marvel, right, Vision easily slots in. You just have to think more, but I do think Captain Marvel does work here and does make some sense. And then here we have Doctor Doom. I love Doctor Doom. Honestly, I think this card is great, but it works well here because when you play a Sandman, they can really only contest in one lane, right? So with the aggressive power and aggressive fighting in the early game, you tend to have a lot of power in a lot of lanes. And so you can actually end up contesting all three lanes with Doctor Doom at the same time. So even if they play a card to win one lane, Doctor Doom will be like, okay, you win that one lane, but I win the other two lanes because of this extra power I'm putting in every lane. So I just love cards like this. Let you contest every lane. Really solid, really strong, does its job. And then we have American Chavez here. Chavez is just for the consistency. You need to be able to fight early, fight aggressively. So Chavez just gives you that early consistency that you're going to draw the 0, you're going to draw into your 1, you're going to draw into your 2, you're going to draw into your 3. You need to draw those early game tools. Like, that's such an important part of this composition. You have to be drawing those early game tools. So having a smaller deck in the early game helps so much, so that you make sure that your draws are consistent, your draws are strong, and you can pressure in the early game. And then last but not least, we've got Magneto. So Magneto is just a big power stick that can also be used for its ability, right? So since you're locking down the lanes usually with Sandman, if you draw that, Magneto can say, okay, I'm gonna move your big power or your 3 and your 4 into one lane, and then I'll win those lanes that you can't contest into. So Magneto lets you always get those moves off because they're not gonna have full boards with the Sandman down, and you can really just say, okay, I will play this for either for the big stats, or I'll play this for the unrevealed, the technical move of your opponent's cards, and use that as my way to win. So I just think it works well. You can use it in multiple different ways, and it's just a big power that also gives you more flexibility in how you want to end these games out. So that is the 12 cards, my favorite list of this patch right now. I really like how it runs. I really think it's fun. I think it feels good. And it's just a nice, to me, it's just a nice deck. I think it's a strong deck too. However, like, if this becomes popular, there are ways to counter it. I'm not gonna right now, like, I'm not gonna spoil the counters. I think if you're thinking, you can obviously think of the counters, right? But like, I'm not gonna spoil it. Like, if it is popular, you're like, Collins, why you gave such a fun deck, but you also threw all the counters, so now I can't run it. Like, I'm not gonna do that. So, if you want to counter this deck, feel free. But I do want to add some suggestions, because people always ask me, hey, Collins, I like your list, but I don't have all the cards. Can I replace this? Can I replace that? Right. So here, I want to throw out some essential cards you kind of need. You're going to need Zero. You're going to need Invisible Woman. You're going to need Doctor Doom. You're really probably going to need Maximus. You don't actually probably don't need Maximus. You can maybe replace it, but you need Zero, Invisible Woman, and Doctor Doom. Like, those are kind of hard to get away from. Invisible Woman's so core. Doctor Doom lets you spread and is very strong, and then Zero lets you play all these negative effect cards without the drawback. Now, if you wanted to replace some of the cards, I do have some suggestions here, right? We've got Mysterio. So, like, if you don't like Lizard, right? 2 for 5. Mysterio, 2 for 4. Also hits other lanes. Also is sneaky in that you don't know exactly where you put that 4 power. So you can definitely get some surprise wins because, oh, I thought you put it here, but you actually put it on the other side. So that's definitely a nice alternative if you want to do that. Armor is also okay. Since you are running ones, you can play down the armor, protect your ones from Killmonger. You can also protect your Chavez or your Magneto if you think people are going to do that last turn. So there is some play there. You're losing 2 power from the 5 power that you would play, but it's still a reasonable option, especially if you're seeing like tons of counterplay and removal like that. For Maximus, right, it's kind of hard to get 7 power for 3, but Brood kind of can do that a little bit, right? It's 3 power for 6. You do have to make sure that you're playing Brood in its own lane, because you need to either have the ability to contest with Marvel or the ability to contest with Doctor Doom. So if you are going to play Brood, you have to make sure that you're playing this in its own lane so that you have the freedom to play an extra card in the last turn or near the last turn. If you don't have Captain Marvel, you can easily replace it with Vision. That one I've already talked about, makes a ton of sense. If you don't have Magneto, you can play a big stick down. You can play Giganto. You can play Hulk, but I'd rather just like a big, more power, more be easier to contest things. So definitely you just want to replace something with big stats if you don't have Magneto. And Arrow's broken right now. So if you can squeeze Arrow into this list, like feel free. Like take something out, put an Arrow in. You could do something like Titania Arrow turn 6, right? Like that's still gonna do a lot of work for you. So Arrow is definitely a very, very broken card, or not broken, but well, a little bit broken. A very broken card right now. So you could definitely take advantage of them. And then we have Atuma. Atuma is another option you can put under the Invisible Woman, because when Invisible Woman reveals the cards, it's at the end of the game. So the end of the turn effect won't actually apply. So Atuma won't get destroyed. And it's also another 0 target. I don't think you're going to 0 into Atuma most of the time. But like, let's say you just don't like Sandman. You don't actually have to run the Sandman. Even though I want to put Sandman in the name of this dead list, right? Because it's so cool. But you don't have to run it. And if you want to do something else, just run more power, more power. You're not happy with the amount of power you have, more power. You can run Atuma and see how that works for you. So there are a couple replacements. You do need 0 Invisible Woman and Doom. I think those cards are a little bit too flexible. But there are some other things. I would maybe make this essential and then make this not essential, maybe. I think that might be a better way of looking at it, because it's kind of hard to replace the 1-cost cards that with high power. Like when you're looking at 1-cost with high power, right? Like there's not a lot of answers, right? You have Blade, but that's 3 power. You have like your best bet is like Rocket Raccoon, and then you hope that the Rocket Raccoon hits the right target, but there's not a lot of options. So I would say maybe the Titania is actually essential, where the Maximus might not be. So overall, that is my favorite list. I do think it's a strong list, but because I've now shared it, and if it becomes popular, it's going to be very easy to know exactly what you're dealing with and then play around that. So hopefully you guys try this out, see if it's fun for you, see if it works, and let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.